But I don't know whether it's just being a woman and seeing that like women could be just like the men.
First of all, have you ever seen Floyd Mayweather? He's about this tall, okay? She would ragdoll him as soon as she put her hands on him.
Shit, Ronda Rousey might kick my ass. That 14 seconds the last fight, shit, man.
And kind of these like badass women who were just like strong and powerful, and it was just really fun to watch. So that's what kind of got me hooked. It was the people like Joanna, Ronda. I suppose the way that she was portrayed was that she was the best, she was dangerous. She was the person that you wanted to watch, you had to watch. She did have this kind of dangerous persona.
She is the most dominant fighting athlete in the world. There's nobody more dominant.
She's at a level that it's going to take a while for everyone else to catch up to.
And the SP goes to, please don't beat me up, Ronda Rousey.
And she was so highly thought about, and you know, for me being a fan of women in mixed martial arts, like, that was exciting. So my name is Amber. I am a psychologist. I have been working in various mental health settings for about 9 years now. More importantly, I am an MMA fan. What I say here is just me reacting, coming up with some ideas, perhaps using some theories, models, some life experience. It's all just for fun.
You know, I mean, that's like a big gift for me.
I wish everyone was that easy to please, man.
Well, you know what? I think those people are not living the moment. Your presence is amazing. The attention you pay to the moment, like, makes my life like so much more fun right now.
Oh, nice.
This is getting really creepy for me, you two. I'm gonna step over here.
You're the one that put me in this interview.
I'm
this
sorry.
Interview
This guy
you're
is
sticking me with this guy, you're gonna leave me alone, you're gonna ditch me out.
Life.
That's right.
Meaning at this point. Whoa, bro. You know.
I don't know. I guess like my instinctual thought is, you know, is this situation different because she's a woman, and is there an element of protectiveness there? Is this person crossing a boundary? And actually, like, kind of what boundaries are in place when you're talking to people in the public eye? And there's often not many boundaries there. And he's not necessarily saying anything about, I don't know, too inappropriate, but it's just almost like you said, like this idolizing mindset. And it almost feels like because he's a man and she's a woman, it's verging on like being seen as creepy, like they're saying. You know, it does look like Ronda does look a little bit uncomfortable with that, but I don't know, is that just because she finds praise a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to kind of like praise how she's made people feel? It just feels like Ronda's a star and this person's come in and is just starstruck, and he just kind of probably doesn't have the his kind of logical mind on full at that point. He's just kind of a little bit emotional in a way, you know. There's that part of his brain that's just talking from that emotional perspective. It's evident, isn't it, of how much of a star Ronda Rousey became.
When are we going to see women in the UFC, man?
Never.
Never?
Never. Thank you guys. All right, man. Thank you.
Firstly, Dana looks so different. But it's, you know, it's interesting to look at that and, you know, think how quickly that response was. Never.
Never.
Never?
It just was completely shut down. There was not even this optimistic hope. Women looking at kind of what sports they might want to go to, it just shuts down any hope of like, this is a normal thing to be doing, or this is something I want to do. It's disappointing in that regard.
I would like to bring the champ out here.
Ronda!
I'm gonna make it official right now. The first ever UFC Women's Champion, Ronda Rousey. And I'm presenting her with her belt. She'll be fighting Liz Carmouche, and she is the main event.
I mean, it blows my mind that you have the clip of Dana saying women will never be in the UFC without even blinking, to him actually making quite a big deal of Ronda Rousey's presence and announcing her as not only the champion, but also the main event. And I think that's huge for women in this sport. I kind of compare it to, in my head, like women in pro wrestling, and just how long it took for women to be trusted with a main event spot. It was just seen as this huge kind of weighted thing of like they absolutely couldn't do it. And it's interesting that Dana goes straight in with trusting the women to main event. That's how big he kind of felt Ronda could be. I don't know whether that's from a more like marketable standpoint or what, But when you just think about what we've just looked at and this, that's a huge difference.
What do you think Ronda might have been going through in her head?
Honestly, I think sometimes she looked a little bit uncomfortable being praised before she actually got to fight and win. And I think she makes a comment like, I only just found this out this morning, kind of thing.
You know what? It's funny, like, I never get nervous for stuff like that. I didn't even know about this till this morning. So, I don't know, man. I don't even know what to make of it.
But at the same time, I think that she's also probably much more secure being put in this position of this person is the best. For her, that's probably a much easier position to be in than someone who people are doubting or who has kind of expectations and pressures to live up to.
I have this one term for the kind of woman that my mother raised me to not be, and I call it a do-nothing bitch. Just because my body was developed for a purpose other than fucking millionaires doesn't mean it's masculine. I think it's femininely badass as fuck because there's not a single muscle on my body that isn't for a purpose, because I'm not a do-nothing bitch.
Stop the track. Let me take that. I told you, give me a minute and I'll be right.
I think, this just shows, doesn't it, how mainstream Ronda had become. Like, Beyonce using her on her tour, the do nothing bitch statements is huge. Beyonce was seen as the best, I think. She's seen as untouchable. She represents women empowerment, and like Ronda was also seen as the best. She was seen as untouchable. Yeah, I think this was really the point where people started to see Ronda up there with the men. She was spoken about and thought of as much as the biggest name in the sport, and not just within the sport, but general media, generally across all sorts of domains. People that were watching Beyonce now knew who Ronda Rousey was because of the impact that she seemed to have and how people related to her, and specifically women. And that's hugely different for the UFC.
Is there anything standing out to you when she's saying that?
She's definitely shared before that there was a time where people used to make fun of her for being too masculine, for her to have, having muscly arms, and I think at school the kids called her like Mr. Man. She now has come forward and is saying, I'm very confident in myself. I'm confident in how I look. I'm not too masculine at all. I am not a do-nothing bitch. I'm dangerous. I'm hardworking. And she's taking back that power and now being confident in her appearance. And I think that is why a lot of women felt empowered by her. I think that she promoted a women's sense of self-worth, of making choices, of being respected, and this had a ripple effect to wider society. But again, this was really when she was able to share her story and actually share her narrative, as opposed to being in kind of interview situations. But at the same time, she did have this aura of power, of being dangerous, of there kind of being this underlying aggression. It was never kind of too vulnerable with Ronda. You'll see that this is exactly the same way that Ronda speaks in pro wrestling. She carries this through. This is very much her safe persona and how she, I don't know if it's how she wants to come across or how she genuinely does come across. It doesn't feel overtly angry. It feels controlled. It feels like this is her, and this is like her when she's safe and comfortable.
Dana, Joe Rogan says that Ronda Rousey would beat Floyd Mayweather if they had an MMA fight. You think what would happen if they fought in MMA?
Yeah, I agree with Joe. She would definitely beat him. She'd beat him and she'd hurt him bad.
Man, you really think that? Because I think she'd have a lot of difficulty getting him to the ground. There'd be a strength problem there, don't you?
Have you ever seen Floyd Mayweather?
Yes.
He's tiny. He's about this big. Trust me, there'd be no problem. She can. I've seen her throw bigger men than Floyd Mayweather and hurt him bad. She'd hurt him.
Would you? Would you take the fight? Because I know you don't like the circus freak element sometimes, but that would be something that people would pay to watch.
Who is this person? It just shows that Ronda was right up there with the men in how people were perceiving her. I think a lot of people thought, wow, this is a woman who could beat the men. And mentioning Floyd Mayweather, for someone like Dana to say, well, she could beat him, is quite big. And I just think, generally within sports, it is a big thing to have someone who is a woman. And also, in any kind of, media situation or whenever the UFC was brought up, like Ronda was always up there with the men, which was huge. Yeah, this is huge.
Ronda, that was particularly intense. There's a lot of animosity. What is that all about?
I just wanted to get in her face and show her that I was there for a reason. She's the one that put the fist on my face. I didn't touch her. She's the one that touched me, and I told her that fake sweet act is icy right through it. I'm gonna show you on Sunday why I'm the champion.
For some people, just keeping Ronda and Holly in mind, I would hypothesise that it is very important for them in the face-offs to come across as aggressive and dangerous. And what happens is Holly touches Ronda. And, you know, if a fighter was to touch their opponent, that would interfere with the rule. And if someone was then to feel less dangerous, that would increase some vulnerability. I see it more as someone who must be dangerous and aggressive. And that is Ronda's persona, like that is all we really see from her. I wouldn't necessarily make any assumption that she felt threatened, so therefore needed this. I think she's always had it. The difference is, I guess, Holly did touch her and it kind of crossed that boundary and it may potentially brought some vulnerability up. I'm sure we've watched enough fights now to know that you might get a lot of comments saying, oh, this person doesn't look emotionally there. I don't think that always translates to how a fight goes. I mean, also with the weight cuts and things, you just think about like Charles Oliveira lately and how that changed the odds. And everyone was saying, oh no, and then like it didn't really make a difference. So I don't know about the foreshadowing, but I definitely think it's interesting. It can definitely tell you about a person. I think that she genuinely believed that she was never going to lose. I don't think she could have tolerated that thought.
How you doing? How
you doing, Ronda?
How do you feel? Guys? How do you feel, Ronda?
Can you guys?
Okay, we've already seen this video.
Is it bad, the bruising, or?
Oh, it's horrible, isn't it? What we know about Ronda that's kind of known to the public is that she was born with complications and she had a speech delay until she was 6 years old. We know that she struggled academically. We know that her father got into an accident and was left disabled and unfortunately ended his own life. Her mum was very able academically. She had a lot of academic achievements at a young age and she also was a judo champion. I guess I'm curious to think a little bit around the position and discourse of ability within that family. You know, what does ability mean? I wonder if there was almost this dichotomy, this black and white thinking of you're either the best or you're unable, with not really a grey area in between. So if you're not the best, you are unable. And with a few of the things that Ronda has said since the loss, I wonder if there also was some internalised beliefs of if I'm not the best, I'm worthless and I'm useless. We have this footage that kind of went viral of Ronda at the airport and she's covering her face. She had broken teeth, she thought her jaw was broken, and you know, she's essentially showing vulnerability for perhaps the first time. And I guess if we think about what we've just thought about, there are also potentially a lot of negative self-beliefs that had kind of come about at that time. And you know, she was kind of no longer in this position of being untouchable and being dangerous. So that was probably really difficult for her. I think that something that was very apparent was that I don't think Ronda necessarily had that opportunity or didn't choose the opportunity to kind of think about and process the experiences that she went through. And the reason that I say that is when she kind of mentions the Olympic bid that she had, she kind of says that she had absolutely everything in that. And then when that failed, or her perception of failure, she went straight into MMA and dedicated everything into it. And again, it's kind of that black and white, all or nothing. Everything was into the Olympics and then picked it up and just everything then went into MMA.
Have you been able to, do you think about the last couple fights? Do you think about what happened or have you processed it all? I think I'd just rather not talk about that right now.
So I think I remember when Ronda started to do interviews again, I remember being quite surprised at how difficult it was for her to talk about the losses. I kind of assumed that she would have kind of gone away and processed it and been okay to talk about, because if she's going to talk to the media again, of course it's going to be brought up. So I do remember being quite surprised, but I suppose if we think about someone who potentially has this black and white view of seeing yourself as either a winner or a failure, that can be really quite difficult.
Winning the Olympics was the only thing I cared about as a kid. I devoted my whole life.
Okay, this is kind of what I just said, isn't it?
it still hurts that I didn't win the Olympics. And it sounds ridiculous to a lot of people, right? That like, you know, we're Olympic medalists, you should be happy, but it would be hard to explain that to my 10-year-old self that was so sure she was going to win the Olympics, you know?
You know, she actually got a bronze medal at the Olympics, but she still refers to that as a failure. And again, that's still that kind of dichotomy of you're either winning or you're a failure. And a lot of us have this internal critical voice in our head. It tells us that we're not good enough. You know, certain life experiences might lead to us to internalize criticism. And that kind of leads to kind of struggles with compassion and self-worth.
So when you get hit that hard, what happens to you? Like, do you feel it at the time, or there's so much adrenaline you don't feel it?
Well, I got clipped in the first exchange. So I was knocked out on my feet like the first time I got hit. Honestly, like my thought, I was like in the medical room, and I was like down in the corner. I was sitting in the corner, and I was like, what am I anymore if I'm not this? And I was literally sitting there and like thinking about killing myself, and the exact second I'm like, I'm nothing. I'm like, what do I do anymore? To be honest, I looked up and I saw my man, Travis, was standing there, and I was looking up at him, and I was just like, I need to have his babies. I need to stay alive. That was like, really, that was it.
You need to stay alive.
So I suppose like we've already kind of thought around almost this black and white thinking, and I think that really shows how much winning and being the best was a core part of her identity. You know, if that's the way that she's kind of protected herself, you know, as long as I am the best, then I'm not, you know, terrible, useless, worthless. That's very, very strong. When those things are activated and you haven't really had the chance to process and make sense of it and deal with it head on, which it seems like she hasn't, you know, that's a really, really tough thing to do. I don't know whether there's an element of avoidance of actually having to deal with these things head on. It's interesting that she'd still come on and do these kind of media interviews and like kind of have these conversations with people when she struggles so much to talk about it. It's different, but I think that's why. You know, with Ronda, it doesn't surprise me that she didn't stay around in the UFC if she was no longer a champion or she wasn't fighting to be one. It kind of maybe didn't fit with what we've just spoken about. Well, she then moved on to WWE to be a superstar there, and at WWE she was introduced as the baddest woman on the planet. She was seen with status and, you know, seen as dangerous. She's seen as one of the best there. She brought a whole bunch of new eyes to pro wrestling. She's got this moniker as the baddest woman that would be quite a good place for her, and she'll kind of stay feeling very contained within that. I think that the only shame is probably how hard on herself she was when you think about her UFC career, and I don't know whether that's almost like translated to the public and how hard they can be on her. And sometimes it feels such a shame that her achievements and everything that she did can sometimes be missed or kind of minimized, if you will, because she really was truly a pioneer in women's MMA and sport in general. I guess that's my only thoughts.